Good morning and welcome to BirdLife South Africa's virtual bird fair this bright and early morning on 5th of September. Thank you for joining us in the kiddies section, and I hope that by the end of this presentation that you'll feel a little bit more encouraged to become involved in some of our activities. I'm going to be diving into the Spring Alive project, and as I said, mentioning how you can become involved. BirdLife South Africa has been involved with the Spring Alive project for the last 9-10 years and implementing it across South Africa. Our sponsorship comes through Heidelberg Cement, and we're very grateful for their support, enabling us to bring these projects to you. So what is Spring Alive all about? It is an international program or project covering Europe, Asia, and Africa, and really looking at tracking migration across these continents. It is an educational campaign helping children and their families become more familiar and more connected with nature and the birds that are found in our areas. We use a very simple mechanism enabling you to track the arrival of spring each year in your countries, and this is done through logging your first sighting of our Spring Alive mascots on our website www.springalive.net, and you're able to go and, as I said, register your first sighting and have a look-see at what's going on across the continent. We use a unique combination of education, awareness, and fun to really bring about the concept of migration. And how does this all come together? Because it can become really technical, and you can be lost in the amount of information that is available for you out there. So who's involved in Spring Alive? Currently, the project is being implemented across 37 BirdLife International partners. So have a look-see and see if you can find South Africa on this list, and or your country if you're tuning in from outside of South Africa. Each country develops resources and activities and projects and programs connected to their conditions and habitats, and have a lot of fun and a lot of learning carries on whilst we're implementing the Spring Alive project. As I mentioned, many birds will migrate across the continents, and so it's a lot easier if we narrow it down and focus on, for instance, 7 particular species, and we call these our mascots. First one is the barn swallow, quite a special little bird, that one. The European bee-eater, which I think is the love of many birders out there. Recently added to our mascot lineup is the common ringed plover. We've also got the common cuckoo, which really in Europe indicates the first of spring, or the beginning of spring at least. Got the sand martin, common in quarries across Northern Africa and riverine areas, common swift, and then the white stork. So these are our 7 species in the program, and we really rally our activities and conservation efforts around these 7 mascots. How can you participate in Spring Alive? Well, there are quite a few different options available for you. The first is tracking the arrival of spring across the countries by logging your first sighting on our website. So after this, please do go and visit our website, www.springalive.net, and if you've seen any of the mascots, do log those in. You can select your country and the species that you've seen, and adding the date and whereabouts you've seen the species, and it will automatically filter into the database. You're then also able to go and search the results per country to see what species are being seen when and at what frequency they're being seen. So we can really then start to get an idea of how spring is moving through and across different continents. So in South Africa, we have, and across obviously Africa, we have a range of competitions that run throughout the spring season. Spring for our African continent starts on the 1st of September and runs all the way through to the 15th of December. We'll get a little bit into more detail on the competitions a little bit later. There's also a variety of games that you can participate with. There are activities and action-taking suggestions for you to download and be able to implement in your own communities. And we love hearing about what you've been doing in your community around migration and the initiation of spring. For schools and teachers, we have a wide variety of resources available to again help you implement migration, the concept of migration and Spring Alive into your curriculum. Our greatest aim through all these activities is obviously spreading the word about migration and getting more people involved in taking action, learning more about, and also monitoring migration across our continents. The resources available, there are our spring migration superstars. These are our mascots, quite comical explanations and main ideas about spring and the migration of these species are available. The theme for 2020, which runs from September, beginning of September to middle of December, is how to be a good birder or bird watcher. What are the things that you can implement to make sure that you don't have a negative effect on our migrants and also be able to collect reliable data? Can you practice to be a good bird watcher or a good birder? Maybe it's just a simple action, such as keeping a list of birds that visit your garden or school, watching how they interact with other birds. Do they particularly favor one area over another? And what are the reasons for that? Also, things to keep in mind when you're out birding is not to scare the birds. Walk slowly, speak quietly, keep your distance, especially from nests, following the laws of the land. And if you're going to enter private property, make sure that you close gates after yourselves and keep to the paths. And one of our biggest ones is keeping your litter under control. So whatever you bring into an area, make sure that you take that out with you. And of course, have fun. Spread the word and talk to other birders and encourage your friends to go out with you as well. The available resources that we've collected specifically over the last 3 years, there's a variety of storybooks. So if you're into reading, this is definitely up your alley. We've got Ringo the White Stork story, which follows the journey of Ringo from Germany up in Europe all the way down to Wakkerstroom in South Africa. We also have a book on the family of bee eaters and how these European bee eaters also migrate from Europe down into Africa and all the way down to the south. Under the current COVID conditions, it's a little difficult for us to get out and spread the news of our stories. So we have developed a Kamishibai story, which is basically a Japanese art form of storytelling. And this year we focused on the common ringed plover. There are a variety of word search activities available for you to do. So if you've really got a keen eye and maybe the weather's not so good and you need to practice your focusing and sighting, start with a word search. And once the weather clears up, you can head back out again. Mainly for teachers, here's a 30-day advent calendar of spring And I'll describe this a little bit more in detail for you just now. We've also developed a Chasing Migration board game, which I'm sure will create a lot of excitement, not only in your class, but around the family table after dinners. So how do you put your Advent calendar together, and what's it all about? I know if you look back at Christmas time, we often get Advent calendars counting down the days to Christmas Day. Here we count up the days for spring and spring migration. This activity is filled with lots of interesting facts, leading you into and exploring the world of birds around us. Cover various aspects such as terminology, so really getting to understand the terms and the words that are used in migration and around birding. You also get to do a bit of data handling, design and technology, maths, astronomy, conservation, reporting, ecology. If you're musically inclined, love listening to music, here's some activities for you as well. And also looking at tradition and culture and how this impacts on the birding world. Most of all, we want you to have fun. So you're going to do some learning, quite a bit of learning, but also lots and lots of fun. So how you put this Advent calendar together, as I mentioned, there's 30 different facts about migration. You can see they're quite broad when it comes to understanding how birds migrate, the heights at which they fly, the distance at which they might fly, and primarily when they might fly. Is it during the day? Is it during the night? And when these peaks actually happen. So you'll print out your migration facts and then collect 30 cardboard toilet paper inners. There are directions that you can download and how to put this all together. You'll slip your migration facts into a numbered container or folded up cardboard inner. So eventually you'll land up with 30 of these different facts in these different containers. These facts, you'll open one a day and they will lead you to various activities. These activities might include a word search of sorts. They might even lead you to more information and more learning about our Spring Alive mascots on information sheets. Might also take you to a step-by-step activity. Might be folding different paper planes to see how wing shape might affect their flight and potential speed whilst they're flying. Or it might lead you to a worksheet. These are fun worksheets, but do bring in elements of the curriculum. So you're definitely going to be learning along the way. We've also developed mascot masks, which are available for download. Here we've got the European bee-eater, the common swift, barn swallow, common cuckoo, white stork, and the sand martin. So you'll get a download available which has all the colors on it and then a blank mask for you to complete. So here's a picture of a Spring Alive welcoming committee that we recently had with a school group, and you can see the various masks, all the different species, as well as all the different colors. So it can be quite an exciting adventure. Maybe you even want to have your birthday themed around Spring Alive and the mascots. We'd love to hear if you do this. As I mentioned, the Chasing Migration board game. This is a very new added resource to our collection. And really, you come and play the game as one of the mascots. So whether it's Ari, the European bee-eater, or Ringo, the white stork, and you're going to follow your migration from the start in the Northern Hemisphere all the way down to the finish in the Southern Hemisphere. Along your way, you will get an opportunity to answer question cards. So these are the little green icons on this game. And your questions may be, for example, name 3 important items you may need to take with you on a birding trip. If you're able to answer the question, you will get that number of units of energy, which will help you along your migration. If you, for instance, land on a Spring Alive icon, these are safe stopovers for you and your flock. And there again, you'll be able to feed and rest, and then add some more units of energy to your running total. So, if you're really good at board games, you might be able to complete your entire migration first. However, and here comes the interesting element, you would need to then give your total units of energy that you've collected and lost along your migration. And the winner is not necessarily the first to complete the board, but to finish with the highest number of units of energy. So you've got to be really good. Answer your questions correctly, and you can win those energy points. If you cannot answer a question or complete a question activity, unfortunately, you would lose those energy units. Throughout the spring season, starting on the 1st of September to the 15th of December each year for the African continent, we have our season competitions. These are open to all South African children under the age of 16 and will close on the last day of the spring season. So let's have a look-see at what competitions are available this year. First one up is we have an art competition. So this is either a drawing or painting competition or entry you can submit on how to be a good birder. What are the things that you need to do and to keep in mind when you're out birding? Second competition is a Kamishibai storytelling competition. So select one of the Spring Alive mascots and create your own story. Record this and then submit it, and you could be walking away with an awesome prize. Prizes this year are sponsored for the Kamishibai story through the Wakkerstroom Bird Club. If you're not 100% sure on what a Kamishibai story is, please stay tuned, because after this presentation, we will be doing a reading of our recently developed Kamishibai story. As I said, these competitions are open to all South African children under the age of 16. So we had a quick breeze through what Spring Alive is all about, and we do hope that you consider this year joining in some of our activities, whether it's at a national level, whether you want to create an event in your local community, or a celebration in your home or at school around the spring migrants, celebrating this arduous journey that they do take and how we can all be involved in monitoring it and also taking action for our Spring Alive species. Thank you for your time, and please do stay tuned in as we will be going through Wren, or following Wren, the common ringed plover, as he migrates from Ireland all the way through to South Africa. See you soon. Thank you for tuning in. This is a Kamishibai story, a Japanese art form of storytelling, entitled Wren, the Common Ringed Plover. This story is about an extraordinary movement of birds from their breeding grounds in the northern hemisphere to their southern wintering grounds. Along their migration route, you'll learn a little bit more of the common ringed plover called Wren. His journey takes him across far-reaching lands over sparkling oceans to a place which we call home. Let's meet Wren and his family and discover the secrets of the common ringed plover. My name is Wren, and this is my family of common ringed plovers who breed in Ireland, way up in the north. We're an interesting breed of bird, and like most species, have our own little quirks. My parents look remarkably like one another. However, my mother is slightly duller than my father. They've been together for a few seasons now. In our world, we call this being monogamous and only having one partner. The common ring plovers are known for making their nests on beaches out of shell and pebbles. With all the changes to our breeding areas, we have begun breeding on landfill sites and in industrial areas along the coastline. We plovers do not need a fancy nest with all the frills. We really want to make sure that our eggs and later chicks are safe. So much time is spent on selecting the right building materials and the right spot. Looking across a beach, you would really need to focus on seeing our nests. They are well camouflaged, small pebbles and lined with vegetation. Between April and July each year, the females will lay about 3 to 4 brownish eggs and keep them warm and protected for almost 3 weeks. Another 3 weeks after they've hatched, we chicks feed ourselves under the watchful eye of our parents. Ensuring we get enough food, we forage along flat beaches, mudflats, shorelines, looking for tasteful morsels. Here you can see we've grown a little more, and I've joined my parents in finding food. What is on the menu, you may ask? A smorgasbord of critters, including snails, worms, creepy crawlies found in the sand, and a range of insects, including ants, beetles, flies, and their larvae. I remember a lunchtime when my dad pulled a huge worm out of the mud. Gosh, it was amazing to watch. He slowly lifted one leg, balancing carefully on the other in the shallow water. He started to gently tap the ground with one foot. I thought he was practicing a circus act. Little did I know he was copying the sound rain would make as it fell on the ground. And would you believe it? A worm started to appear from its hole. Quickly, my dad dashed to grab the worm and swallowed it whole. Dad later told me it was called the foot trembling method. I really did need to learn this trick if I wanted to find tasty worms. Another way my parents taught me to find food is called the run and pause method. This sounded like it would take a lot of energy, but boy was it worth it. The bounty was amazing. How we used this way of collecting food is we ran a little on our dainty feet across the beach, then stop, dead still. Looking around, we try and spot any insect that now thinks it's safe to come to the surface. If no morsel is found, then we run a little bit more and stop, carefully looking across the sand and mud. As soon as we spy something moving around, we quickly dash to pick it up. It took me a while to practice this way of collecting food, but in no time I'd mastered the art of run and pause. Remember I mentioned that common ring plovers will migrate? This really means we take long journeys from where we breed in the north to our wintering grounds in the south, stopping along the way to eat and rest. My family and I were so excited when the Spring Alive project added us to their list of mascots. Now everyone would know a little more of our species, the journey we take and the hardships we are facing, and what you can do to help. This list of migration superstars includes the common cuckoo, the European bee-eater, the white stork, the barn swallow, common swift, and the sand martin. I do hope as we migrate towards South Africa, we get to meet some of these legends. The day arrived when Dad said it was time to take to the skies. I was older now and could cope with the demands this journey was going to take on all of us. Mom had been preparing the youngsters for some time now. Larger and more frequent meals mean that we had increased our fat reserves and could make the longer flight. The weather was starting to turn in Ireland too. The days were getting shorter, and before we would know, winter would be upon us. Dad led our flock of a few hundred birds as we left our home heading toward France. Of course, we'd stop along the way, especially after crossing seas and having to deal with those winds. We continued our migration from France to Spain. How all the older birds remembered the route, I just don't know. Dad told me it was instinct, something built into us, as well as remembering the different landforms that helped guide us along our way. There were 1 or 2 days where we did get a little lost. Remember I mentioned there were threats we face along our journey and how landforms guide us? Well, in some of these areas, the wetlands we used to rest and feed in had been turned into agricultural fields. Where were we to find food and a safe place? We needed to push on and try to get back en route. So it took us a little longer than planned, but we're on our way to our next stopover. Common ring plovers have been studied through the years. This is done not only by fitting geolocators to several birds, but also through ringing programs. Tiny metal rings are fitted to our legs, which are then released and retracked in the most humane and ethical manners. The data the humans collect is then sent to a central database where lots of information is pulled. This may include how far an individual bird has flown over a period, the age of the bird, general condition, and many other things. The tidal flats we arrived in Mauritania offered us great relief after landing on the continent. Hundreds, thousands, and millions more birds congregated here to refuel. There were bar-tailed godwits, red knots, common redshanks, curlew sandpipers. This area is greatly important for the survival of all these species and has such become a designated Ramsar site. Another type of flight pattern we use during migration is called long non-stop jumps. This was the case as we moved from Mauritania to Nigeria. It was rather long and demanding as the winds blew in from the coast. Nigeria is also considered a hotspot for birding, and humans are not disappointed as again large numbers of birds begin to congregate in wetlands. It has been a long journey so far, so our flock decided to rest for a few more days before taking off further down the coast. Much of our time was spent feeding. Remember, Dad taught me 2 different methods of catching food, the run and pause method and foot trembling. It was glorious to watch thousands of common ring plovers use these methods all along the lake shores. We had a great stretch to cover as we left Nigeria, heading towards Namibia. Long non-stop jumps, that's what we did. There are 2 areas in Namibia that attract many waders, Walvis Bay Lagoon and Sandwich Harbour. Dad said we'd need to see which area was not as crowded before we took our rest, even though we might move between the 2 areas for feeding. The species we came into contact with here included curlew sandlings, ruddy turnstones, and white-fronted plovers, a cousin of ours. Another few days rest before crossing another border. Not that we needed any passports or permission to cross. We had arrived in South Africa. It is here that we plovers would spend a few weeks before making our way back to our breeding grounds in the north. The season had changed in South Africa. Everything was green. Rivers and dams were filling up with water, and boy, was there abundance of insects to eat. Mom said it must have rained recently. However, there were some things that were a little off. Weren't all the fire breaks supposed to have been completed by now? Dad had overheard some farmers talking at one of the wetlands. Apparently the winds had come rather early this year and prevented them from completing all their fire breaks. Thankfully, we moved around the country and were in no danger at all. But where were all the birders? A few days later, as we flew into the most beautiful wetland, we saw them, birders. These seemed to be rather nice people. They were quiet as they moved around to get a better view of our flock coming in. Some even sat down to have a lunch. And do you know what? They didn't even leave one piece of litter on the ground. But what was that strange thing on their faces, covering their mouth and noses? We settled in and found a comfortable roosting area. We could hear their quiet chatter. The man was explaining something to his son. These are uncharted times, he said. This COVID virus is affecting the whole world, and that is why we've been in lockdown, staying at home and only going out for essentials like food and seeing a doctor when only absolutely necessary, he continued. Now that things have gotten better for our country and less people are being infected, we're able to go out again in small groups and wearing our masks. It was all making sense to me now. That is why we had not seen many people out and about before. One thing I could see is that these birders were good people who were respectful of this area and the birds found them. I continued the next day to explore the area, looking for tasty bites to eat, and came across a brilliantly colored bird. So I struck up a conversation. He was a European beater, another one of the Spring Alive mascots. I was blown away as Arrow told me about his migration so far. He boasted about how last year an entire story was written about he and his family. I got a warm, fuzzy feeling as this year was my family's turn to be written about. He also mentioned Wingo, the white stork. Wow! Did that lady have a tale to tell about her movements? Arrow and I chatted a while longer, and as the sun was setting, he flew off to meet up with his flock for the night. I returned to my flock and nestled in. The next morning, after a stroll along the wetland shores, something incredible unfolded before my eyes. I noticed a furry creature stalking one of the older birds. We tried to raise the alarm, but he was just too far away to hear us. The younger birds watched in awe as the adult plover began this weird movement. He pretended to have a broken wing and hobbled across the shore. The furry creature seemed to lose interest, and as he did, the adult plover took to the skies, safe and sound. Mom explained that this was a defense action we plover used when we feel threatened by predators. Weeks passed, and soon it was time to head back to Ireland. The season was beginning to change in South Africa, and food would start becoming less. We would generally take the same route home, and with a couple of deviations here and there, rest and feeding well, we would ensure we made the journey home in a good condition to begin our breeding and the entire cycle again. Common ring plovers are interesting and ingenious birds. Let's learn a little bit more. I mentioned the experience on the wetland shores earlier and how the adult plover uses a defense mechanism. Parent birds will also use this mechanism to distract predators away from their nests. They would rather sacrifice themselves to ensure the survival of their young. Now that's what I call love. The common ring plovers have the most amazing eyesight. They can locate the smallest of food items rather quickly. Their eyesight is so good that they're even able to forage on the mudflats at night. Female plovers will construct their nests out of material found along the pebble beaches. This aids them in protecting their eggs and young. Even the eggs are well camouflaged, being a mottled brown and black spots. And just wait until the young emerge. They are the sweetest long-legged balls of fluff, again a mottled color, helping them to camouflage as they move around. Aerial displays are important when it comes to breeding. The male common ring plovers have elaborate moves which they do in front of the females to attract their attention and in the hope of being selected as a partner. I'm happy to let you know that besides some troubles we've had along the way, I made it back to the breeding grounds in Ireland. I found a mate with whom I selected a good spot to set up house with, and we continued our family line. I learned much on my first migration to South Africa, what to look out for and what to avoid, and I do hope that you learned a little bit more too. Remember that the Spring Alive season in South Africa runs until the 15th of December. There are loads of activities and competitions you can become involved in over the next few months. And remember, make sure to follow all the Spring Alive mascots as they start to arrive in our country.